Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is a review of the 2000 sci-fi horror film Hollow Man. Now, this film to me is an underrated, unseen, unsung gem. I really feel that this film, as years have gone by, has gotten better, not worse. It's one of those movies that, to me personally, deserves a much bigger cult following than it has. This is honestly my favorite film about an invisible man. I like the 1933 original with Claude Rains, and there's other films that deal with invisibility that I didn't mind, but this is my favorite film that deals with the concept of invisibility. Um, this film has a certain sense of spectacle that is yet to be rivaled or even equaled. It's also, in my opinion, features some legitimately great performances by the cast members, specifically Kevin Bacon and Elisabeth Shue in some of their finest roles and work. I think Verhoeven's direction in this is dynamic, and I think it's pure dynamite, and I think he's selling himself way too short when he's talking about this movie and saying that anyone could have done this as well. It's one of those movies that, to me personally, deserves to be seen and not be invisible by the general public. And it did fairly well when it came out. I mean, it made a good chunk of money. I mean, it came out and it made 190 million in the worldwide box office, so it's not like it was a box office bomb. There were critics who weren't that fond of it for reasons that I personally find lame, which I'll get to later. But it's one of those movies that it did make some mark on the box office, made a little bit of a dent, enough that people know about it, and enough that there was a direct-to-video sequel. But for some reason, you don't see very many people talk about Hollow Man nowadays. And I really think that that's unfortunate because I genuinely do feel this is a gem. It's directed by Paul Verhoeven, and I wouldn't say this is on par with RoboCop or Total Recall, uh, but I would say it's on par with some of his other films that I've seen, like Starship Troopers. Actually, I like this more than Starship Troopers. So I would say this is actually on a level above Starship Troopers. And I don't mind Starship Troopers. I like Starship Troopers for the spectacle, for the action, for the effects and stuff like that, and the satire. What really hurts Starship Troopers is the characters. I think this film has stronger characters. But that's a discussion for another day in another movie. But Paul Verhoeven's direction in this, I think it's dynamic. I think it's absolutely delectable. I don't think there's really anything that wrong with it. I thought he did a excellent job directing this movie, working with his actors, working with the sets, working with Kevin Bacon, who for a good chunk of the production, he was just wearing different colored skin tight spandex suits because that's how they were able to layer on the CGI and everything. And he's acting all intense, and he's wearing like a green suit or a purple suit, or all these different colored suits, and that's hard for the director to take seriously, let alone the rest of the cast. And I feel Verhoeven did a good job reining people in and getting people to take it seriously, which makes the performances by the cast members when they're interacting with the CGI in the film actually believable compared to some other instances that I've seen with actors with CGI. In large part, that has to do with the director who was reining people in and pulling people aside and saying, hey, I know it's silly, I know it's goofy, I know seeing Kevin Bacon acting all crazy, but while wearing skin tight, I don't think it was lycra, but he's wearing skin tight latex and he's in all the colors of the rainbow. I know it's difficult, but need you to stay focused because that's really going to pay dividends when it comes to the overall finished product. And Verhoeven, he's also a master when it comes to darker, more violent kind of storytelling, and The Hollow Man is no exception to that rule. In fact, I actually like the director's cut more than the theatrical cut because it adds even more of an edge to the movie. I don't really feel that the sequences with Kane where he uh, rapes a neighbor to be too early or too soon. The screening audience, the test screening audience didn't like that scene because they liked Kevin Bacon. They were into his character. They thought it was out of character for him to do that that quickly into the movie. And I don't think it was out of character at all. I think a majority of the test audiences, I think they were seeing something in the movie that really wasn't there. They were looking at Kevin Bacon and how likable of a guy the actor is, and they were applying that to the character of Kane. The character of Kane, he's charismatic. He does have his likable traits, but he's a pure sociopath and he shouldn't be trusted. And there are clues and little touches to show that he wouldn't think twice about raping the neighbor that he's been spying on, like he's in Rear Window prior to that particular sequence. So I don't think that really was a problem. I think that should have been cut from the film. I also don't think that some of the other stuff should have been cut. Certain lines of dialogue, certain other another sequence where he is fondling a co-worker's breasts when he's invisible, and she's questioning herself and thinking that she's crazy, but of course you find out that no, it was real. Like Sebastian was messing with her. I think those little touches, I think they add to the film. They don't detract from it. It gives it an edge that it doesn't otherwise have, and it also really paints an imperfect picture for the character of Sebastian, which is the right picture. That's his portrait. He's not a perfect guy. He's got a serious dark side and a serious sinister side to him, and I'm fine with that being revealed more throughout the film until he finally goes off the deep end. I'm fine with that. I think that's actually a dynamic that works. I don't think that's a problem. Speaking of that kind of dynamic, that is something that is definitely the result of the screenplay by Andrew W. Marlowe. I really like this script. I think this script has a nice sense of fun to it, but it also takes things seriously when it needs to. It's got this edge. It's got this darkness that is very appreciated. I like the fact that the screenplay and the overall story takes a slasher film approach and puts the Invisible Man into this particular type of story. I think there were a lot of critics at the time that didn't like that. They didn't like that approach. They thought it was cheap. They thought it was uninspired, whatever. And I like it. I think it makes the film stand out because there aren't that many Invisible Man slasher movies out there. I mean, you can count some like what, The Invisible Maniac, which is an extremely low budget movie that might as well just be made by porno filmmakers, has the same sort of production values. No, there really isn't another film like Hollow Man when it comes to taking this Invisible Man concept and adding slasher elements to it. I think that's effective. I like that. I don't think that's a problem. And it definitely helps that Kevin Bacon is just so gung-ho and so balls to the wall with his performance. So that makes it work in a totally different way. And then Elisabeth Shue is also a great final girl. So that is another element to the film that really clicks and really cooks. I liked Elisabeth Shue in this. I also liked her character. I thought the screenwriter did a good job writing her and making her a strong, badass character. The rest of the cast members, I felt that they were fleshed out decent enough. I've heard criticisms that the characters are too hollow. I don't get that. I think they've got enough development for you to actually care about them. And where they make up for in terms of lack of character development. They make up for that with with personality and charisma, and this fun back and forth between the different characters, and so on and so forth. And I don't think we really needed more character development, because that would have hurt the film's pacing, which I feel that the story goes by at a good pace. So I didn't really need more. What I got was enough. It was satisfying to me. Um, there's even elements in the script that I think are really clever. Like, for instance, just the way that Sebastian and these other test subjects, they turn invisible when you see all of their organs and everything, the muscles and so on and so forth, and then those disappear, leaving behind only the skeleton until everything is invisible. I thought that was a really clever idea. A very fresh and new take on invisibility and the overall process. I like how Kane puts on this latex mask, to have some sort of a face. I like that touch. Instead of bandages, it's a latex skin colored covering. I like that touch. I like other things, like, for instance, in the climax, one of the characters uh, takes blood packs and just pours them all over the facility, and not to well, really what it is, it's to see where Kevin Bacon is coming from. So to see where Sebastian is, she even pours blood on him. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because it's a very clever and unique way to have a ton of blood in a horror movie, but not actually be a gory sequence in terms of limbs being cut off, or blood spraying out of somebody's neck or something. It's a way to have a ton of blood and have just an absolute blood fest, but in a way that fits the story in a fashion that's a little bit more different than your average slasher in terms of a kill. So I thought that was a really cool touch, and there's some crowd pleasing sequences, like the finale with Elisabeth Shue and Brolin, who are fighting Sebastian while they're hanging on this elevator shaft, and Elisabeth Shue, when she kicks him down to his death and says, "Go to hell." Like, there's a lot of, there's some crowd pleasing stuff, and uh, there's some fun lines of dialogue too. Sebastian's joke about Wonder Woman, I thought that was pretty funny. It's brash and it's crass, if I can say that word. But it's still something that it cracks me up because of how crass it is. Uh, yeah, I honestly don't find it really any legitimate issues with the script for the most part. I really don't have any serious issues with it like other critics do. I don't think there's serious tone issues. I don't think there's serious problems in terms of the plot. And in terms of, the only thing I can maybe think of that's worth mentioning is that for some reason when Sebastian turns invisible, it's like he turns on an invincibility code. Like, all of a sudden he's like Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees, and he's like impervious to harm or something. That's a little much. I think they could have explained something in a line of dialogue, like, oh, the longer he's invisible, the more his body adapts to the formula, and it causes side effects that make his bones harder, or his muscles harder, or it makes it so he can withstand more punishment or something. Like, they could have easily just written that in there, that this was a side effect of the invisibility process. Heck, they were inventing it for the military, so it would make sense that they might have something in there to entice the military personnel to continue to fund the project. Um, But other than that, a little nitpick, I don't really have anything about the overall story or screenplay that I thought was out of place or I thought didn't work. The cast is great. It's a really good cast. Kevin Bacon is Dr. Sebastian Kane. I love this performance because this is a character that is not really a good guy, but he's interesting, he's intriguing, and he's captivating to watch. And he's genuinely charismatic, like most sociopaths are. A lot of sociopaths and serial killers are very charismatic. I mean, look no further than someone like Ted Bundy. Like these are real people who are charismatic, who are interesting. They're not just straight up evil, but they're not also just straight up goody two shoes. I like the fact that Sebastian Kane is a character who has these elements to his personality and to his overall vibe that make you pause and make you think there's something off with this guy even before he becomes a guinea pig, before he turns himself invisible. So there's a lot of nice foreshadowing that the screenplay has that I think a lot of people overlooked because of how people were all like, "Oh my God!" in the test screening audience, he wouldn't do that. Yeah, he would, and it just makes for a very compelling and genuinely terrifying villain because there's something about him that you like, and you want him to kind of figure it out and be a better person or something. You want to see some sort of redemption arc, but then it gets to a point where you're like, he's too far gone, that's never going to happen. So then he becomes really dangerous because you know that, even though there's elements to him that are good. He's a brilliant mind, and he has some aspects to his personality. He has some traits that are genuinely nice, but there's these dark parts of him that are just so dark that they eventually overtake him when he succumbs to madness. And I like that portrayal of insanity. I like that portrayal of craziness because that's honestly how a lot of it happens. When people lose it, they kind of usually had, unless it's a mental breakdown of some kind, but with people who are who really go off the deep end and become serial killers or become sociopathic people who are just really into all these sociopathic behaviors and tendencies, they had those tendencies at the start. And it just sometimes all it takes is just a push, and then they're just off the deep end. And they weren't always just straight up evil or straight up good. There was always this in between going on, and there was always this inner struggle, and that's what makes villains like Kane so mesmerizing, because there's that struggle. It makes the character less transparent because there's that inner struggle with the character as well as within the audience. Elisabeth Shue, she was such a trooper with this film. I think she like tore an Achilles or something. She hurt herself pretty badly shooting a sequence in this movie, and instead of replacing her, which they could have done, and I'm glad the studio didn't do that, they suspended the production of the film for 7 months so she could recover so they could finish shooting. That's an admirable thing to do by Sony. And, I'm glad they did it because it's a great performance. It's honestly my favorite role from Elisabeth Shue. I really like her take on Linda McKay. Josh Brolin, he's fine as her new boyfriend and the co-worker. He doesn't have as much character development as Kevin Bacon or Elisabeth Shue, but there's enough there that it's a character that you want to see make it out alive in the end. And it was nice to see Josh Brolin play this kind of character who's kind of a dope. A lot of times Josh Brolin plays a character who knows all the answers and he's just a mustache twirling bad guy, or he's a good uh, heroic type of character. Unless we're talking about some of his earliest stuff, like in The Goonies. But as an adult actor, that's a lot of stuff that he was doing is a lot of those two extremes. It really wasn't a role where he's kind of just a dopey guy, a normal guy. And it was nice to see him play that particular role with in this film as Matt. Um, Kim Dickens, she's in it as Dr. Sarah Kennedy. You have Greg Grunberg, who plays Carter. Joey Slotnick, who plays Frank Chase. Mary Randle as Janice. William Devane, who you might recognize. He's been in a lot of different stuff. He's been in 70s horror movies like The Dark. He's in it as Sebastian's former mentor turned boss. And Rhona Mitra, she plays the neighbor of Sebastian. Now, Robert Downey Jr. apparently had been offered the film's title role at one point in time, but they decided to go with Kevin Bacon. I'm glad they did, because Kevin Bacon, this is another role that just showcases his versatility. He's such a versatile actor. He can play good guys equally as well as he can bad guys. And Hollow Man is another example of how versatile of an actor he is. And sadly, Kevin Bacon didn't really do as much bad guy roles. And honestly, that's another reason why I like it, is because Kevin Bacon gets to go outside of his comfort zone and have fun with such a villainous bastard of a character. And you can tell it was hell for him to shoot this. This was not easy, but he gave it his all. And I personally feel it was worth it. It was 100% worth it in the end. Features a score by Jerry Goldsmith. I would say it's not one of my favorites of his, but it's still a good score. It's still got some nice rollicking aspects of the overall composition. It's still not what I would call, like I said, I wouldn't call it a masterpiece of a score like some of his other work, but I still think it's serviceable and it's strong. It's not one of those scores where you're probably going to sit back and listen to it again and again, but it's still a effective score, especially in the film's finale. Jerry Goldsmith, I think this is one of the last few scores I think he did before he passed away. And you could tell he still had it. I love Jerry Goldsmith. He's my favorite composer. And he's done so many great scores, even for movies that aren't even that great. So, and a lot of his scores just elevate the films that he does in ways that I don't think other composers can. And when it comes to this finale, the score elevates it to another level. It makes everything even more intense and thrilling. I've just always been a big fan of Goldsmith, and it's a good score in this film. I wouldn't call it great, but it's still a good score. Cinematography by Josta Vacano, excellent. Top of the line. Josta Vacano is a great cinematographer. He did a wonderful job shooting the sets of the facility and sequences that take place outside, and dealing with lighting and dealing with all the different things that you have to do with the CGI and the different effects. I felt it was the editing by Mark Goldblatt. I also thought it was excellent. He's a veteran, and he's one of the best editors, in my opinion, out there. I've always felt his editing was exemplary for the most part. I think he's an underrated director, and I think just another excellent editing job by Mark Goldblatt, one of the best editors that have ever been in the editing chair. Really just enhanced a lot of the effectiveness and overall intensity and suspense and chills that the film has because of the editing. And you can't talk about Hollow Man without talking about the CGI. The CGI in this, for a film in 2000, is jaw-dropping. Even today, the CGI in this film is incredibly impressive, and in my opinion, it still holds up. I don't think it's dated at all. I think it looks better than some CGI that I've seen in the year 2020. That's how well the CGI holds up in this film. I mean, this is stuff that has never been done before. Never been done before. Visual effects supervisor Craig Hayes deserves the highest marks and the highest amount of praise for his work. I'm trying to remember exactly who did the effects for the film. I wanna double check who did the effects for the film, so I give the proper effects house the right amount of credits, because it is really just absolutely spectacular. There were some makeup effects as well, like the gorilla. The makeup effects were done by Alec Gillis and his company. He actually played the gorilla, if I remember correctly, in the film. Um, I guess ADI did some stuff. Yeah, ADI. That's his company. I believe it's Amalgamated Dynamics. That's who did the special effects. Visual effects. Phil Tippett Studio did some stuff, but yeah, I think it was Amalgamated Dynamics. I fucked up their last name, but yeah, that's who did the effects for the film. For some reason, it was nominated for an Oscar but didn't win. How the hell did this lose Best Visual Effects to Gladiator? How? How does Gladiator have better visual effects than Hollow Man? Hollow Man turns somebody invisible from their muscular structure to their skeleton and to, nothing. That's a more impressive visual effect than whatever tiger they did for Gladiator. Like, are you kidding me? Why did Gladiator win Best Visual Effects that year over Hollow Man? That's something that just what? I mean, it's right up there with shit like John Carpenter's The Thing not even getting nominated for Best Makeup Effects in 1982, which I still can't believe to this day. But yeah, the effects in this are just absolutely spectacular. Spectacular special effects. And in HD, they look even more amazing. I would love to see a 4K remaster of this. Sony's been doing they've been doing some new 4K releases. They did one for The Mask of Zorro. I would love to see them do one for Hollow Man. I think it would look great. But, yeah, I don't really know what else to say about the movie. Except I think it's a thrill ride. I think it's a great movie. I think it's terrific. I don't think it's a horrible film by any means. I know there are a lot of people out there who are not very big fans of it. To each their own. I don't have an issue with that. I would say if it's a movie you were kind of on the fence about, or if it's a film you haven't seen in a while and you don't remember liking it the last time you saw it, I would recommend you give it another watch sometime. If it's a movie you haven't seen yet and you've always been curious about it, or it sounds interesting to you, I definitely would recommend giving it a watch, because I think it's absolutely worth at least one viewing, because I think it's just for the effects alone and for performances from some of the cast members like Kevin Bacon and Elisabeth Shue, for the direction by Paul Verhoeven. And it's really a damn shame that this is a movie where Paul Verhoeven felt like, all right, I'm done in Hollywood, because anyone can do this movie. And it's really a shame, because I think that, like I said at the beginning of this video, it's selling his work short. And I would have loved to have seen him do more films after Hollow Man, instead of retiring or going to I think he went back to, was it the Netherlands? I think he went back overseas and he did work there. But yeah, easily, like I said, my favorite Invisible Man movie. Holds up really well. So I pretty much said everything I wanted to say about the movie. Except thank you for watching, and as always, I will see you later. See ya.